I kind of started watching it. I kind of started watching it before. I didn't really watch it all the way. I just watched the beginning and I was like, oh crap, this is definitely something that I should watch on stream because it just kind of like talks about. I feel like this particular subject is something that I've harped on for so friggin' long that it is actually insane. So before we even get started, guys, I'm going to link you the video. Make sure to play it in the background while we watch here so that you get some view time and all that stuff. Go in there, hit the like button, all of that stuff. This is from AutomaticJak. I actually haven't seen a lot of content from him, but I think I've heard him being mentioned in like Bailular videos or something. So, you know, we're going to be checking this out. The title is Blizzard Lost the War on Weak Cores. Now, before we even begin, I feel like it's important to mention I am someone who's been very vocal about this particular topic. I feel like the overusage of add-ons in World of Warcraft has grossly overcomplicated raids to an extent where Blizzard should take some serious action on this subject. Because what ends up happening is, people just keep designing add-ons to solve the puzzle of a raid, and Blizzard has to constantly make raids more and more complex, and then people go into the add-ons and they solve more and more raids, and Blizzard goes and makes them even more complex, which basically means anyone that wants to really engage in raiding at this point of the game's life cycle, you're talking about, okay, first thing you do, you get into the game, install deadly boss mods. Second thing you do, okay, which bosses are you doing? Okay, this boss you need weak aura A. For this boss you need weak aura B. For this boss you need weak aura C. And there's always this argument from the community. There's always that one guy who comes out and he's like, let me just get my proper arrogant face on. It's like, yes, a bunch of casuals, see? I raid, and I don't use any add-ons. You don't need add-ons to raid. I go with my guild, and we do just fine. It's not a problem. Just don't use the add-ons. Yes. This is like the average, smug piece of trash that you sometimes get when it comes to these types of videos where you talk about the overusage of add-ons. What these people fail to understand is that, look, maybe you're raiding with a guild, maybe you have, maybe you guys all know each other, maybe whatever the fucking situation is. The point of the matter is whenever something becomes a de facto standard that is accepted by the community, so say a weak aura for a boss, it is expected of you if you go into a public group to come prepared with that weak core installed and DBM installed and properly configured and all of that stuff. It is expected of you to know all of these things and to install all of these things. And if you don't, people are going to get mad at you. There's going to be, expletives exchanged most likely. And it's just a community de facto expectation whenever something gets solved with an add-on. You just install the add-on, the thing is solved, it's not a problem for anyone anymore, and therefore Blizzard has to continuously go on this arms race against weak cores and all that bullshit. Because of that, as someone that has seen this situation firsthand multiple times, I became, and especially after seeing this in World of Warcraft and then going to Final Fantasy XIV, and when I first started playing Final Fantasy XIV, I was like, I don't even want to do raids, because I don't want to have to deal with this, the potential add-on situation in another video game. I'm just like, look, I just want to play the game and I don't give a fuck. And that's when people told me, no, in 14 you don't need add-ons, you don't need anything. You just go in there and you do the raid. Like, what do you mean you need add-ons? And I was like, what? And then you go in there and you do the raid, and the experience was a million times better than having fucking air horns blasting in your face, going like, brr, you're sitting in fire, brr, screen all red, brr, you're within 5 yards of another teammate, brr. It's like, that experience is just miserable, right? Whereas in 14, the boss just communicates everything that is happening and shit just works, okay? Which to me is a much better way of doing things. And it actually kind of ignited the passion to go back into raiding once I did that. But anyways, that's a little bit besides the point. The point of the fact is, Blizzard says that they actually have the means to stop these add-ons from communicating stuff back. And in my opinion, the time is now. Right before the war within, chop them. Chop weak auras, clean off. It's like, here's the thing. If you want a weak aura to tell you like, oh, your dot dropped. Uh-oh, here's a big alert to make sure that you can see that you're missing your dot on the boss. Fine, whatever. Have a million fucking alerts on your screen. The moment a weak aura conveys a boss ability, chop that bitch clean off. Like, chop, give it the chop, the axe it. No, you do not get to know when the boss is doing something. You do not get to know if you're standing on fire. You do not get to know if, you know, the ability that the boss is doing is 5 seconds from now, 10 seconds from now, or 30 seconds from now. No, there's no countdown timer telling you exactly when the next ability will potentially happen. None of it. Just get rid of all of it. Okay? And it all gets communicated organically with the boss. Just chop that bitch clean off. The problem is there's a lot of people in the community that are simply not skilled enough to raid. Sorry. And they need those timers. And, you know, if Blizzard chops that off, they're going to be like, oh my God, my timers. What do you mean I have to look at the boss? What the fuck? I've never had to look at the boss in my whole life. I don't even know what he looks like. So, you know, that's my position on that. But anyways, I feel like I've explained way too much. Let's get into the video.
Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Jack. Back again to talk about private auras, raiding the race to world first, and how Blizzard has kind of lost, in my opinion, the war on weak auras. Now, it's gone on for quite a while where there's been frustration about like weak auras playing the game for you, and rightfully so, where weak auras felt like they were a mandatory to be able to actually kill certain bosses, or at least just not have a hellish time progressing on encounters. And
again, like I said, it's not even about them being mandatory or not mandatory. It's about whenever it comes to the World of Warcraft community, whenever something makes an encounter easier, it just becomes a de facto standard in the community, very much like you get de facto standards in the industry. Like, for instance, you know, right now we are converting to, I mean, we have kind of like converted to USB-C for the most part, which is a much better form of, you know, plugging shit into your computer. USB-C is way better than micro USB, which is a piece of dog shit. I was actually looking around to see if I have any examples. Unfortunately, I don't have any USB cables at hand, but you guys know what I'm talking about, because, you know, micro USB, you're like, oh, it doesn't plug in like this. Let me turn it around. It's annoying, right? USB-C, you're just like, oh, it plugs in. It's great. It's fantastic. Fucking works. Doesn't matter which position you fucking plug that bitch in, it plugs in. That is what is called a de facto standard, which is the exact same type of friction that you would expect in a boss fight in a raid in World of Warcraft. So, for instance, say a boss has a mechanic that says if two players are 10 yards, are within 10 yards of range of each other, they both blow up, they both die. So if they get this debuff, they need to move further apart than 10 yards. See, the micro USB example would be none of these players have a weak aura, none of these players has DBM, so they're kind of like, you know, they start moving apart, but they're not sure if they're exactly 10 yards apart or not, and because they want to maximize their DPS, they move a little bit and they keep shooting. But because they're using the micro USB method and it's not properly optimized, they fumbled it up and it's like, oh shit, we're too close, blow up, dead. Then there's the weak aura that comes in and just gives you a warning, you're 10 yards away from this player, move away. And so you just move away. That's the USB-C. The USB-C becomes a standard, very much the same way that the weak aura becomes a standard. So it's like, hey, look, we just all use this weak aura so that we don't have to deal with this mechanic and the problem is solved. Where in reality, there could just be a visual indicator when you're close enough to this person, like maybe, I don't know, some random special effect on your character, like, oh, you're about to explode, blah, blah, blah. You know, there could be like a million different ways of communicating this in the game without an add-on, but a lot of times Blizzard doesn't even bother implementing these things because why? There's an add-on. Who cares?
as a result of this, Blizzard had put in private auras. So this is back in late October, really.
Wait, Blizzard did what?
A hellish time progressing on encounters. And as a result of this, Blizzard had put in private auras. So this is back in late October, really, where they adjusted a number of mechanics to do private auras. So if you don't know what these are, Basically, all spells related to the mechanics are private auras, where you are not able to mark in an aura to be able to like set aside assignments when you are affected by these debuffs. This is the same thing that happened on the Echo of Neltharion, where if you're affected by Volcanic Heart, you're not having the weak aura telling you necessarily where to go and how to be able to play around it. And so as a
Extra helper spells are just, so this is what I'm saying, like the boss no longer communicates the ability. This is a good thing. So Blizzard's actually moving in the right direction. This is a very good thing. If I'm getting this right, if this means that, oh, these auras are private, that means that add-ons can't fucking track them, all of that stuff. If that's what this means and add-ons can't track these auras, big win. More of this. More of this. Everything like this. Good job.
result, they built out a list weak aura so that they prioritized and they noticed who was actually affected by this aura. You're on a list, and then first on the list goes here, fifth on the list goes there. By this aura, you're on a weak aura so that they prioritize and they having the weak aura telling you necessarily where to go and how to be able to play around it. And so as a result, they built out a list weak aura so that they prioritized and they noticed who was actually affected by this aura. You're on a list, and then first on the list goes here, fifth on the list goes there. And that's how they organized the mechanic to deal.
You see what I mean? Blizzard's like, okay, we don't want you to actually track this with add-ons. We want you to figure this out. And so they made an add-on to counter Blizzard's way of doing things. See, this is why I said chop it off. Blizzard said, we can make it so that you can't fucking see it. I'll tell you what, go one further. Straight up say, you put in a weak aura that tracks this shit and you're fucking banned. We will actually, I'll tell you what. No, don't even give people like, oh, we'll ban you for like a month. No, actually make a big post, like, you know, one of those big splash things. Like, for instance, this morning I opened up battle.net. You know what shows up? It showed up this fucking big poster of Warcraft Rumble. I was like, man, fuck Warcraft Rumble. I hate that shit. I don't want to see that thing in my computer. I don't want to be served ads on Battle.net for Warcraft Rumble. You want to serve me ads for World of Warcraft? That's somewhat more acceptable, but serving me ads for Warcraft Rumble, get that shit out of my goddamn screen. So just make one of those big splash ads like you did for Warcraft Rumble that says, hey, we're going to start taking some serious action if you use weak auras on raids. Fair warning. And then, you know, somebody goes and says, whatever, I don't care. And they do it, and Blizzard's like, okay, here's a month suspension. And they're like, wait, what? Yeah, that's right. Here's a month suspension. And then when they come back and they do it again, it's like, okay, you're gone, bye. Time to buy a new account, baby. It's time to buy a new account, buy some level boosting, and, you know, and then you do it again, and they ban him again, straight up. And they just keep banning him forever. Yep, do it. Fucking do it. That's the way to do it. That's the way to fix it.
Deal with it. Now, when they're adding these private auras, notably, we're going to focus on Flamebound, Shadowbound, and Seeking Inferno from Smolderrun. All of these mechanics have had workarounds being built into them from macro mechanics. And so what these macros are doing is when you are affected by something, like as you can see from my own Smolderrun progression right here, when you're affected by the Seeking Inferno, the orb targets you. You can see the little marker onto my head. But there's a macro that you have to hit. And so the first person right there, IKTB, then hits their macro instantly, and I am soon afterwards. So I was the second person to hit my macro, and then I'm built out into this list. And all it is just a quick macro, which tells the weak aura, hey, I have this debuff. And then as a result, it sets up a list based off who has hit their macro. And that's how that first orb goes off, because they're the first one who selected it, and they go ba-boom. After that, I am second up on the list. I collide with it, and then it goes boom. And then you're able to sort out who is dealing with these mechanics in turn based off you sending information to that weak aura. It could be anything. It doesn't necessarily have to be, hey, I have, you know, Seeking Inferno on me. It could be, I have, you know, aura number 1, and it just sorts it as a result and then builds out a list for you to be able to decide who has these mechanics, and that's how they're able to sort it each round. The same thing is going on right now for the World First race with the Flamebound mechanic. Now, what this does is it goes through, just like this is from my own heroic, so I'm not yoinking any of the footage from the Race to World First gamers, but definitely be checking them out. When you go into this first round of Corrupt, the boss is going to be channeling into the heart of a Mirrorsil, and you have to soak these orbs. Now, in Mythic, what you have is either Flame or Shadow orbs. And so each player is marked by Flame or Shadow. And what you'll see in the Race to World First is having those Flame and Shadow orbs coming in, and players are then hitting their macro if they are fire, or they're hitting their macro, or they're not hitting their macro if they're shadow. A similar priority list is built out that sorts players in a semicircle around the boss, telling them where they need to be able to go. That's the key function of it, and it's not specific to, this is the absolute fire debuff that's now a private aura. It could just be any aura that they're telling the weak aura that they have, and you either have it, hit the aura, or you don't, and you don't select it, and then it gives you a priority list on where you...
Seems to me like we should just delete weak auras. The more he speaks, the more I'm like, okay, we just delete the weak aura, right?
Have it, hit the aura, or you don't, and you don't select it, and then it gives you a priority list on where you want to go, so that players are going to be able to organize themselves. And so this is the primary reason why I would say that Blizzard has lost the war on weak auras, is that when mechanics like this exist, just by their very nature, they don't have a good way of breaking this sort of like list function, this macro function that exists for Seeking Inferno, for the Flamebound, Shadowbound setup. And as a result, they're always going to be using this macro setup to play around it. And since they're using a macro setup to play around it, it just adds an extra annoying step for everybody in the race. And
so just notice how now not only the new player has to, be aware of deadly boss mods, weak auras, whatever else you want to put on there. But on top of it, they have to be aware of this fucking macro that exists, that you need to go get it from someone, so that when a certain mechanic happens, you need to hit a macro that puts you on a list that then will get resolved by weak auras for you. It's like, bro, do I need to say anything else? Do I need to say anything else? Like, look, listen, I just want to show you guys something, okay? We're at 426. I just want to show you guys something, all right? Look at this UI, dude. Look at this. It's a fucking NASA control center, okay? We're going to launch a rocket to the moon. We're going to interface with the International Space Station. Although, to be fair, this is a healer UI, so you need to pay attention to everybody's health. Although oh yeah, these are like buffs and shit, so that I guess you need to be aware of those too. Then you have like your typical DBM bullshit around here. But it's like, bro. Save me. Save me. It's like, I just want to know, at this point, what is the argument in favor of weak auras? That's what I want to know. Like, what's the actual argument in favor of weak auras? Because Blizzard is even trying, to just be like, okay, you can't use weak auras for this mechanic, and players are like, watch me. Back in the day, in ICC, I remember because I had to install this because the guild Q at the time, he was like, okay, we got to install this thing. I forgot what the name of the thing was, but it was something that just literally, do I have paint on this computer? It was something that just literally, like, say, let me get like a boss arena, right? I could just get a boss arena real quick. Wow, boss arena, like a random one. Let's use this. Can I put this thing in here? Perfect, right? So what this add-on would do is it would just straight up, like, no ifs, ands, or buts. Can I zoom into this? Nice. So like what this add-on would do, right? Imagine this is a big boss's mechanics. These dudes are doing something, right? What this add-on would do, in no uncertain terms and without even beginning to exaggerate, is it would just like the boss would cast an ability and the add-on would straight up draw something in the ground. This. I'm not even it was straight up a geometrical shape just like this, and then it would fill it with shit. I can't fill it with. Can I? Whatever, you guys get the idea. This thing would be full. Wait, I can do fill. Solid color. There you go. So it would do something. Wow, that's a beautiful color. I don't know how to do paint, bro. There you go. It would just be like, oh, this mechanic is going to happen here. And then a different mechanic would happen with a different shape. And it would just go like, oh, okay. Let's make this black and then screen. And it would go like, okay, there's a different mechanic that's going to happen here. And this would just straight up render in your in-game client. So that you'd be aware, oh, you got to go do this thing. And then a different mechanic with a different shape. It's like, oh, another thing is happening here. Let's say that this one, instead of this color, would be like, whatever. It would straight up draw fucking geometrical shapes in the motherfucking ground, telling you the solution to everything. Again, I forget what the name of this. It was not bigwigs. It was straight up an external executable. It wasn't even a traditional add-on. It was an executable. And Blizzard actually stepped in and they said, okay, you guys are pushing it a little bit too much with this bullshit. Okay? That's too much. And they consider that specific software a bannable offense. Well, what's happening right now is that weak auras and DBM and all of this other stuff is reaching that level. And this is when Blizzard needs to come and take another stand and be like, okay, you can't do that. You need to stop. Same thing as in 14. Yeah, I know. 14 has, they also have an add-on that does this. But the difference is, Square Enix catches you doing that shit and you're banned. That's the difference. Whereas in WoW, it's like, oh, he used weak auras. Oh, well, too bad. You know, oh, he's using DBM. Oh, well, too bad. You know, oh, he can barely see, like, you know, our amazing art that we've done for this game is like 10% of this guy's monitor. Oh, well. He's not even looking at the game anymore. Oh, well. You know, whereas with Square Enix, it's like, oh, you did that? Oh, and there's proof? Okay, bye. You're banned. I don't even know how long it is, but yeah, people get banned. They ban people. Which is just like, just having that potential of having your account banned will be a major deterrent for a lot of people. But then they also have to work on detection mechanisms. You know, fucking detect it. Start banning people. Fuck them.
Step for everybody in the race. Everybody in like Mythic rating and those who are trying to get into Mythic rating. And so for World First Raiders, it doesn't really make too much of a difference. They're the best in the world. They can hit an extra button if they need to. But for everybody else, it's another step in the equation that if you mistakenly hit your macro, if you're not paying attention to like your surroundings, you're not as easily able to handle this mechanic, and it adds another layer to the boss fights that your guild now has to deal with and your guild now has to contend with. And that's probably the most frustrating thing, is that it's all based off of the mechanics that they have specifically designed. How are you going to be able to very rapidly start clearing through some of these flame infernos as you're going out through boss progression? How are you going to be able to instantly sort who is receiving these debuffs, how you're going to be sorting out which of those players is going to resolve these mechanics first? Like, we're on day one, for example, of Smolder Run.
Now, and the other thing that you need to be asking yourself is like, you know, he's asking, how are we supposed to deal with all of these mechanics? This is just too much, right? That's kind of like the point that he's making, and I agree. But I feel like the question that needs to be made is, why are these mechanics so complex? And the answer is simple. Because add-ons. Because it's an arms race. Because despite what they said, you know, I think ahead of Dragonflight, where they said we're not going to be participating in this arms race with add-ons anymore, they clearly still are. It's becoming a serious problem. And this is something that World of Warcraft definitely needs to figure out. They need to figure out their rating scene. They need to stop jerking around with these goddamn add-ons and just get rid of them. Just get rid of them. Just straight up, oh, you got weak auras? That's a bannable offense now. That's too bad. Okay, listen, you have 1 week to sort out your UI. Like, just give them a warning, big splash screen like they did for me for Warcraft Rumble. Give them a warning. It's like, listen, you got 1 week to sort out your add-ons. Get rid of weak auras from your system. Otherwise, a week from now, we're going to start handing them out like this. like this. We're gonna start handing them out bans. The problem is, I'm gonna be real. The problem is that the Blizzard moderation team doesn't have the balls to do that. They don't. I mean, just look at the recent bot situation in Season of Discovery, right? I'm sure that most people saw that clip from Asmongold's channel. They're not even doing anything about that, where there's just like blatant botting happening all over the Season of Discovery servers. There's blatant botting happening everywhere in World of Warcraft Classic. There's blatant botting happening everywhere in retail. And they don't even do anything about that. And that's like easily provable, easily verifiable. The fundamental issue here is that the moderation team is either A, non-existent, or B, does not actually have a set of functioning testicles, or in case they happen to be females, a set of functioning ovaries. I don't know if ovaries give you bravery or not, but I'm going to say, for the sake of argument, yeah, you either, you need to have your testicles in the right place, or you need to have your ovaries in the right place, okay? So that you can actually, at the end of the day, it's huevos, okay? You need to have your huevos in the right place, and that is going to allow you to actually, this guy fucked around, he found out. Fuck him. Fuck him. Ban him. Get rid of them. Destroy them. And while you're at it, also get rid of the WoW token. I figured I'd just like slip that in there. Just slip it. Just get rid of the WoW token like real quick. It's no biggie. That make me so happy, bro. Just get rid of the WoW token. It's no big deal. Come on.
Those players is going to resolve these mechanics first. Like we're on day 1, for example, of Smolder Run progression, as you can see right here. And you can even see how long it takes for people to be able to soak. I'm taking my own time. This is probably the first time I got hit by this mechanic. And then I'm 3rd on the list, even though I'm close, right? And so players that are far away should be delaying their cast of the use of the macro. And then players that are close, like myself at this point, should have been mashing it instantly. And since it takes a little bit of time to be able to learn and add into the equation, it just extends this longer and makes it more difficult, rather than just having the weak aura on its own telling you what to do. It adds another layer to the equation for a mechanic that on its very head, you either have to be in voice and like constantly yelling over everybody, or the raid leader has to have their eye in the sky to actually tell who's affected by everything, and it becomes a massive pain. You can see in these early polls how we're trying to sort through which players do and do not have it, and also space out enough time so that everybody can deal with it. And as a result, players are still, once again, fighting up against this sort of aura system where they're accomplishing the very same goal at the end of the day. And aura is telling them which order that they want to make sure they're clearing their debuffs out. It's dictating how they want to be handling a mechanic over and over and over again. And it's just
like, I'm just looking at this, and I'm just even thinking about, like, you see how you have this thing over here, overheated 3, tank soak 3. Imagine instead of having this timer going down, which is a deadly boss mods timer, this is a result of an add-on. Imagine if instead of this, for this particular mechanic, overheated, the boss just does an animation where the boss just goes like, and, he goes like in a Super Saiyan pose, and he just goes like charging up, right? And that would be this mechanic. All you got to do is look at the boss and like, okay, the overheated mechanic is coming up. The other mechanic, tank soak. Okay, so tank soak, I'm assuming it's going to be like a big slam in the ground, right? So before the boss does that, boss goes like big animation where he puts his weapon up in the air and goes like, ugh, and then, oh, here comes the tank soak. Better go to the spot and soak it. It's like, why? Why do we need all this bullshit? It can all be communicated by looking at the boss. Just do proper boss animations, and it can all be communicated like that. Very much like this aura that everybody's like, holy shit, what the fuck are we going to do? It can all be communicated properly, and maybe it doesn't need to be as fast as it is right now. Maybe it just doesn't need to be that fast. Like right now, it's being super fast because they know they're countering add-ons and weak auras and all this other bullshit. Just have that mechanic be slower and let people sort it out. Or better yet, have the mechanic just be clearly assigned properly in a way that is more predictable so that people can plan for it. But no, they have to do this ridiculous, unpredictable bullshit because they don't know how many fucking add-ons this particular person's going to have. So we need to make sure that the mechanic is complicated as fuck so that everybody has to be gigabrains. It's like, no, dude, just make it simple and get rid of the add-ons. And that way, everything is just organic and everybody can come in and they can learn and it's intuitive. And it's like, oh, the boss is raising his weapon, means that the tanks are about to get hit real hard. But they have to make the animations. That sounds like a lot of work. Yeah, you got to do some of that, Like I've been having my computer crash. Guess what? This morning I spent quite a few hours trying to see if I can fix it. I had to spend quite a few hours trying to fucking make it work. Same thing. The game is broken. Fucking fix it. Make it work.
Are still once again fighting up against this sort of aura system where they're accomplishing the very same goal at the end of the day. And aura is telling them which order that they want to make sure they're clearing their debuffs out. It's dictating how they want to be handling a mechanic over and over and over again. And it just becomes pretty much the same exact impact, but it's another layer of complexity for the average Mythic guild. For those who are trying to get into Mythic, you still are downloading an aura. You're still figuring out the order based off of the machine, the matrix, that's telling you what you want to be able to do. It doesn't really accomplish the goal that I guess Blizzard has actually set out when they've created these auras to begin with. There's other like positive sides where things like, Blaze or like Blaze in particular, you're not able to build out a mini map the way you would in like Archimond, where you could sort through where all the safe zones are, or have like a map that you stare at that shows how you want to move. Like those things are actually good. But my beef with it is specifically the mechanics themselves, not whether it's a private aura or not. It's just the mechanics in themselves that are created that pretty much need to have a weak aura to be able to solve, unless you're some giga gamer race to world first.
And again, keep in mind, this isn't me saying it. Because I know that people bring up the argument, oh, Rurikhan doesn't even raid and doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. This is him saying it. He raids. He was raiding heroic on those clips, which I know it's not as big deal as Mythic. At least I think he said it was heroic. I know it's not a big deal as Mythic, but he's the one saying it, okay? Tell it to him, all right? In case you have any questions about any of this bullshit. But the reason why this stuff is even happening is precisely because of the existence of weak cores, and developers are like, okay, they're just going to put a weak core on this shit, so we got to make it harder. And the developers they're still on this arms race, despite the fact that Ian clearly said at some point, I wish I had the quote here, but at some point before the release of Dragonflight, I remember there was an interview with Ian. I think it was with Asmongold. If it was not with Asmongold, it was somebody else that they were talking about raids, and Ian said, no, wait, was it the Preach interviews? I think he might have, he said his rack was heroic, yeah. But I think it might have even been the Preach interviews. If you guys remember, we also reacted to those last year. But during that, Ian specifically said, we've been going on this arms race against add-ons, and we're going to throw down the towel. We're not going to be fighting against add-ons anymore. Turns out that was bullshit. No, you're not. You're still doing this stupid arms race when what you should be doing is just getting rid of the add-ons. And I know there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be upset, but here's what you need to understand. What is the better thing for the health of your game? Like, I'm actually curious, by the way, because this is going to go on YouTube. It's going to be a video. So write in the comments and tell me, what do you think is best for the health of the game? You have these add-ons and you have this eternal arms race, because that's what it's going to be. If we keep the add-ons the way that they currently are in World of Warcraft, with weak auras, with all of these things, you are basically in an eternal arms race against the add-ons. That's what it is. Or you get rid of the add-ons and now you can simplify raids. And when I say simplify, people are like, oh, you're going to dumb down the raids. It's like, just wait until you don't have DBM to tell you all of these timers and all of this bullshit. You'll see how simplified the raid is going to feel. The problem is that people have gotten way too used to having all of these DBM timers, all of these weak cores, and all of these layers of bullshit that tell them exactly how to solve every single mechanic in the game, to the point where they're barely thinking for themselves. And because of that, they're like, oh, if a raid is simple, it's just dumbed down and it's easy. But you take all of those things away, and I want to see just how skilled you guys really are. I want to see it. Hell, take my challenge. Go ahead. Go do whatever. Not even the Mythic version. Here's the thing. I'm going to say it. Not even the Mythic version. You get 10 people and do the heroic version of the current raid tier with nobody using add-ons. Let me know how that goes. I want to see all 10 points of view, by the way. If somebody actually does this, I want all 10 points of view recorded so that I can look through them and see what add-ons are installed. Yeah, go ahead. Go do it. Oh, right. No, but it's more convenient to do it with the add. Oh, right. Yeah, but if they simplify the raids, they're dumbing it down. But you can't do those raids with 10 people without using those add-ons. Oh, okay. I get it. All right. I get it.
Have a weak aura to be able to solve unless you're some giga gamer race to world first, and even they are doing it because there's so many other mechanics that they have to deal with on the encounter.
No, here's the other thing, and the players that are doing Mythic Race to World first, not only they're using all of the add-ons, but on top of it, they have people that they pay to develop add-ons for them on the fly to solve mechanics that they encounter for the first time. I don't know if people are aware of this, but like, you know, the big guilds, they have people that straight up develop add-ons for them on the fly. They'll be like, okay, we need a weak aura for this, we need a weak aura for that. I want you to write this add-on for me, write this thing, bada bada bing, bada boom, and all of that stuff, and they just implement that stuff, right? So they're literally coding shortcuts into the raids using World of Warcraft's built-in add-on system, which is beyond ridiculous.
That having some of them that help you automate and help you take some of the thought out of how you deal with that mechanic are just infinitely valuable for high-end rating, and that's always how it is. So it's kind of a weird, frustrating thing that you have these exist. Firestorm, or like calling the meteors dropping onto players and how you want to place them around the room on something like Farak makes sense, right? It's not so much having private auras exist, it's more so on how they're designing those mechanics in general. Having like Nimue, where the explosive seeds are on targets and everything. I believe that's one of the tank mechanics in the encounter.
But again, the reason why they make those mechanics as hard as they do is because of the fact that the weak auras exist. Weak auras exist. Those mechanics need to be more complex to go against the weak auras so that they keep on going through this eternal arms race.
Where the explosive seeds are on targets and everything. I believe that's one of the tank mechanics in the encounter that they have to deal with. It's not the blossoming bloom or whatever it is. Those things also make sense, and that's okay. Polymorph bomb, same thing on council. Like, those things are okay. That way you're having to actually figure it out on your own on the fly. So having some private auras exist is fine, but if they want to keep on designing these mechanics where you need to be able to resolve them and somehow communicate with everybody in an incredibly quick fashion, you're always going to be able to do that faster using a program than you are just hopping onto voice and hashing it out in that way. And at the end of the day, it comes down to encounter design more so than, you know, gamers using the programs to automate all of the tasks that they have before them. We're seeing it now in the Race to World first, and when these auras eventually get released to the general population, I know there's Smolderon ones going around right now because my guild has them, but I'm sure that the Farak ones are going to be coming around very soon as well, once the Race to World first is over. And when that happens, everyone's just going to use weak auras to do the mechanics all over again. We'll be seeing. I will say I've been enjoying Amir Drasil. I just don't know how they're solving this war on weak auras without first looking inwards at the encounter design. Let me know what you guys think about the whole private aura setup. Let me know what you guys have been enjoying for the Race to World first so far, and I'll probably be home soon after Thanksgiving weekend to be able to back gaming at my place. All right. Thank you for watching, guys. Hope you all enjoyed it, and I'll catch y'all next time.
Okay. Once again, like I said earlier, be sure to go in there, leave the video a like, subscribe, do all of the usual things. Let me take a quick look at the comments here. Also, let me go ahead and connect to WoW. Go on, baby, so we can get some music. Let me take a look at the comments here. The reason add-ons became a thing is because the built-in UI did not meet player needs. For example, healers have always needed raid frames because the built-in raid frames weren't up to task. Even now, healers complain about healing NPCs. Scorching Roots and Laradar because their raid frames don't make it intuitive. The war on weak ore is just another example of WoW fighting the wrong fight. I mean, without solving the weak core's problem, you can't really fix the rest, because if you make things easier. But he is right about the healing stuff, because I do remember some encounters. This was all the way back in Cataclysm when I was raiding as a healer, and I think that was some encounter when I needed to do some healing. I forget what it was, but it was a NPC, and it was always a fucking pain in the dick to target that bitch. They have made fights more and more complicated over time to try and combat the benefits you get from add-ons, which is only increased reliance on add-ons. Raiding has become a bullet hell simulator, and I hate that. True. This is why people enjoy raiding in Classic more than in Retail. They've just implemented that the aura does the mechanics the players already know the order, then tune how hard it is by the orb, spawn, distance, and speed, so you're given control over them instead of how it has to be played. Maybe a number above your head. See, he's describing like the way that he's just describing better communication of mechanics. Also, the audio's too loud. Sorry about that. But yeah, he's just describing like better visual clarity on what the mechanic is. Given a change by his recent philosophy, actually listen to the community since Mythic raiding is absolutely here to stay and is a very small percentage of player base that clears a Mythic raid. I think it'd be awesome if Blizzard brought the guys from Liquid and Echo and talked through how they can solve this because no, see, this is the wrong idea. Liquid and Echo are not your average player, and Liquid and Echo are not going to fix the raids for your average player. Like, I'm not saying anything bad about the guilds, but like, they are the high-end top guilds. They're not your average raiders. They should bring in average people that do ahead of the curve like a month after the raid is out or something like that and see what they have to say. When it comes to mechanics like this, like Smolderon orbs, the private orb, the orb itself should have some indicator to let you know how to resolve it. Exactly. We just reached Smolderon tonight, let me tell you. Whole guild is tilted because we spent 30 minutes setting up... Whole guild is tilted because we spent 30 minutes setting up a macro list private aura stuff. Like, it's so bad. We're essentially using a weak aura, but it's 3 times harder and clunkier to set up, but everyone ends up using it anyway because there's no way you play this by improvising. So the game makes it harder for weak aura add-ons to read, but they still can. The result doesn't really change. It's just much more annoying and harder for the players. Yeah. Which is why I say, make raids simple, get rid of add-ons. Simplify the raids, get rid of the add-ons. It's literally that easy. Not interested to raid Mythics, so I have been shown the fight design of the slider. I'd be surprised if Blizzard did anything more than surgical fixes. It would be okay if the UI met our needs or bosses weren't designed around add-ons weak auras to begin with. Bosses weren't designed around weak auras add-ons to begin with. There's certain mechanics like Smolderon Soak. There's zero chance people did that successfully without the things you mentioned. Even without the raid leader eye in the sky, Liquid and Echo still use the macro. Shit. Sheer irony on the previous raid tier that the one mechanic that was a private aura, Echo and Altherin, was such a poor mechanic that people had to use a workaround weak aura for it anyways. Yeah, it is what it is. It is what it is. Fix the game, Blizzard. Fix it.